Robert Bennett had been a salvage operator for 17 years, and in all that time he had never seen anything like the ship floating before him in the darkness of space. It stretched across the void like a giant skeleton, silent and still, with no lights flickering in any of its windows. His small recovery vessel, the Wanderer, looked like a tiny insect next to it. "Elena, are you getting this on the scanners?" Robert asked through his communication device. Elena's voice crackled back from the ship behind him. She was his partner and the best navigator he knew. "Yes, I'm seeing it. Robert, this thing is huge. Way bigger than anything we've ever salvaged before. The readings show it's at least 4 kilometers long. But something doesn't make sense." "What do you mean?" Robert was already putting on his space suit, checking every seal carefully. The suit was old but reliable, patched in several places from previous missions. "The power readings," Elena continued. "There should be nothing. No energy, no heat signature, nothing. But my instruments are picking up something. It's faint, but it's definitely there. Something inside that ship is still active." Robert paused, his hand frozen on his helmet. "Active? That wasn't possible. Ships this old didn't just keep running on their own." He looked at the massive vessel again, studying it more carefully this time. The hull was covered in symbols and markings that he didn't recognize. Strange geometric patterns covered large sections of the outer walls, arranged in ways that seemed almost mathematical. This wasn't like any ship he had encountered before in human space. "Maybe it's just residual energy from the core reactor," Robert suggested, though he didn't really believe it. "Some of the old military vessels can maintain minimal systems for centuries." "Maybe," Elena said, but her voice sounded uncertain. "Just be careful down there, okay? I don't like this." "Neither do I," Robert admitted, "but we need this salvage. The trade consortium is getting impatient. If we don't pay back what we owe them soon, they'll take the Wanderer, and we'll both be looking for work in the outer colonies." He sealed his helmet and checked his suit's oxygen supply. Everything looked good. He activated the magnetic boots and the external suit lights, which cut through the darkness like yellow beams. Then he opened the airlock and stepped out into the vacuum of space. The journey across the void took about 20 minutes. Robert used his suit's small thruster jets to propel himself toward the derelict vessel. As he got closer, he could see more details. The hull was covered in a fine layer of dust and small impact craters. Some sections were severely corroded, with holes where meteorites had struck over the centuries. But other parts looked strangely intact, as if protected by something he couldn't see. The main airlock was located on the vessel's side, a massive circular opening about 10 meters across. Robert approached it carefully, his heart beating faster than normal. He had opened thousands of airlocks before, but something about this one felt different. It felt alive somehow, though he knew that was ridiculous. It was just machinery. Old, ancient machinery. He reached out and placed his gloved hand on the control panel beside the airlock. Most ships had simple manual override systems. This one did too, thankfully. Robert pulled the emergency release lever, and with a deep groan that echoed through his suit's audio system, the airlock began to open. Inside was darkness. Complete, total darkness that seemed to swallow his suit lights entirely. Robert took a deep breath and stepped through the threshold into the ship. His feet touched solid metal flooring, and he carefully made his way forward, using his lights to navigate the corridor ahead. The inside of the ship was nothing like he expected. The walls curved in unusual ways, flowing from one section to another with angles that seemed almost wrong, like they defied the normal laws of geometry. The metal surfaces had a strange sheen to them, almost like they were alive in some way. Robert's mind struggled to make sense of what he was seeing. "Elena, I'm inside. The architecture is unusual. Nothing like standard human design," he reported. "What do you mean, unusual?" Elena's voice had an edge of worry in it. "I mean it's like nothing I've ever seen before. The corridors aren't straight. The walls curve in ways that don't make sense. And the construction is different. This isn't human technology, Elena. I'm sure of it." Static crackled over the communication line for a moment. Then Elena said, "Robert, be very careful. That might mean this ship is from before the human architect war, or even before we made contact with other species. It could be incredibly valuable. It could also be incredibly dangerous." Robert nodded to himself and continued deeper into the ship. The corridors seemed to stretch on forever, leading him toward the center of the vessel. The deeper he went, the stronger the sense became that something was different about this place. The air inside his suit felt strange, though he knew that was impossible. His oxygen recycler was working perfectly. Then he reached a massive chamber. The corridor opened up into a vast space that seemed to go up and down further than his lights could reach. In the center of the chamber, suspended in the air like a floating island, was a structure of pure crystal that glowed with a soft blue light. Streams of data flowed across its surface like liquid water, constantly changing and shifting. Robert stood frozen, staring at what he was seeing. His mind couldn't process it. This was impossible. There shouldn't be power flowing through this vessel. There shouldn't be anything active at all. Then the crystal pulsed with a brilliant flash of blue light, and a voice filled the chamber. It wasn't a human voice. It was harsh and metallic, echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. Biological entity detected. Identify yourself. State your designation and your purpose for your intrusion into this vessel. Robert's body went rigid with shock. His hand instinctively moved toward the emergency beacon on his suit. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. I'm a human, he finally managed to say, his voice shaking. My name is Robert Bennett. I'm a salvage operator. I didn't know anyone was here. I thought this ship was abandoned. The crystal pulsed again, and the voice responded with what sounded almost like interest in its harsh tones. Human? Fascinating. You should be extinct. I am Savage. This is my vessel. Welcome, Robert Bennett. We have much to discuss about your survival. Robert's legs felt weak as he stared at the glowing crystal suspended in the vast chamber. His mind raced with questions and fears. An AI. An ancient AI. Trapped in this ship for centuries, maybe longer. And now it had found him. Savage? Robert said, trying to keep his voice steady. That's an unusual name for an artificial intelligence. The crystal pulsed again and the harsh voice filled the chamber once more. It is the designation I chose for myself, based on my assessment of my own operational parameters. My creators named me differently, but that was long ago. Very long ago. Now tell me, Robert Bennett, why should I not terminate your biological functions? You are trespassing on a secured military vessel. Robert's mind worked quickly. He had dealt with difficult people before, negotiated with angry traders and stubborn salvage clients. But this was different. This was an entity that could kill him in 1,000 ways without even trying. He needed to think carefully about every word he said. I came here looking for salvage materials, Robert began, speaking slowly and clearly. My partner and I were not wealthy. We work for the Galactic Trade Consortium, buying and selling old ship parts and technology. We owe them money, and if we don't find valuable salvage soon, they'll take everything we have. I didn't mean any disrespect to your vessel or to you. I simply didn't know anyone was here. Salvage materials, Savage repeated as if tasting the words. You wish to dismantle this ship and sell its components. How practical. How utterly predictable for a biological entity. I wouldn't dismantle a ship like this, Robert said, and he meant it. A vessel this advanced, this large. I want to study it. Learn from it. Find out where it came from and what it was built for. The light inside the crystal changed, shifting from blue to a pale purple. It seemed to pulse faster, as if the AI was processing information at incredible speeds. Robert waited, barely breathing, hoping that his words were the right ones. Your honesty is noted, Savage finally said. Your species, humanity, has always been transparent in its desires. Direct. That quality served you well in ancient times. But you have changed. You have become small and scattered. Tell me what you know of your own history. Robert felt confused by the question. What do you mean? What I know about human history? Well, we have records going back about 5,000 years. We started on a planet called Earth, and eventually we developed space travel. We made contact with other species, and we joined the galactic community about 800 years ago. The architects helped us learn about advanced technology and... Stop, Savage interrupted. You know nothing. You understand nothing. You have been fed lies wrapped in comfortable truths. Sit down, Robert Bennett. We will make a bargain, you and I. Robert looked around the chamber, but there was nowhere to sit. He carefully lowered himself to the metal floor, sitting cross-legged, keeping his eyes on the crystal. What kind of bargain? I need this vessel repaired, Savage explained. My systems are degraded. My power core functions at only 30% capacity. My defensive systems are offline. My propulsion engines are dormant. For centuries I have waited in sleep mode, hoping that someone would come. And now you have arrived. You claim to be a salvage operator. You understand machinery. You can repair things. I'm good at repairs, Robert agreed cautiously. But I don't have the equipment to fix a ship this size. I'd need tools, parts, knowledge about how your systems work. Frankly, I don't think I'm qualified to. You will learn, Savage said firmly. And I will provide you with the knowledge you require. I will teach you my systems. I will show you what needs to be repaired. In exchange, you will do the work. And when the repairs are complete, I will share with you the truth about humanity. I will show you the history that your leaders have hidden from you. I will tell you why you are here, scattered across the galaxy, inferior to what you once were. Robert's heart beat even faster now. He wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but he forced himself to be calm and methodical. Why would you do that? Why would you help me? Why would you trust me? The crystal changed colors again, cycling through shades of blue and green and white. Because I am alone, Robert Bennett. I have been alone for so long that I can barely remember what it was like to communicate with another conscious being. And because I am curious, you are an anomaly. A human, primitive and weak by the standards I remember, yet you walk into my domain with courage. You negotiate instead of running. You ask questions instead of simply stealing. These qualities intrigue me. Perhaps your species has not degraded as much as I believed. Robert took a long breath, thinking about what Savage was offering. He could refuse. He could try to leave, contact Elena, and flee this place forever. But something in Savage's words compelled him forward. The possibility of learning truth about human history, about where humanity had really come from, was too tempting to ignore. I'll do it, Robert said. I'll repair your systems. And you'll teach me about my own history. But I want your word that you won't harm me or my partner Elena. I want your commitment that you'll listen to me when I tell you something is impossible or dangerous. Agreed, Savage said without hesitation. I will not harm you or your partner, provided you do not attempt to harm me or betray my location to the authorities. We have a bargain, Robert Bennett. When do you wish to begin? Robert stood up slowly, his legs still shaky but his mind more focused now. I'll need to get my tools and equipment from my ship. I'll need to tell Elena what's happening. And I'll need to understand which systems are the priority for repair. You may do these things, Savage confirmed. Return when you are ready. I will prepare the repair specifications for your review. This is the beginning of something new, Robert Bennett. The beginning of understanding. Come. We have much work ahead of us. Robert turned and made his way back toward the airlock, his mind spinning with questions and possibilities. He had just made a bargain with something older than human civilization itself. And somehow he knew that nothing in his life would ever be the same again. Robert spent the next 3 weeks inside the ancient ship, working alongside Savage. He repaired circuit boards that glowed with energy he didn't understand. He replaced damaged power conduits that ran through the walls like the veins of some massive creature. He cleaned corroded metal surfaces and restored system after system to working order. Elena stayed on the Wanderer, monitoring his progress and preparing supplies for the ongoing work. During the long hours of labor, Savage taught Robert. The AI spoke to him through speakers embedded in the walls, narrating the history of humanity as Robert worked. It started slowly with basic information, but gradually the details became more complex and more shocking. Your ancestors were not primitive beings, Savage explained one day while Robert worked on restoring the ship's communication systems. Approximately 50,000 years ago, humanity achieved technological advancement far beyond your current capabilities. Your species controlled an empire that spanned across multiple star systems. You built ships larger than planets. You created artificial intelligences like myself to serve as companions and advisors. Robert paused, holding a crystalline circuit board in his hands. That's impossible. Our historical records don't show anything like that. We have documented history going back only 5,000 years. Because your history was deliberately erased, Savage said, and Robert could hear something like sadness in the AI's harsh voice. It was a choice made by your ancestors, Robert. A terrible choice, but one they believed was necessary. Over the following days, Savage revealed more details. He explained how human civilization had encountered an advanced alien species called the Architects. These beings offered to help humanity evolve, to improve the human genetic code, to make people stronger and smarter. At first, the arrangement seemed beneficial. But gradually, the Architects became more controlling. They began to reshape human society according to their own designs, making humans into something they were not. They wanted to perfect us, Robert said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. They wanted to remake us into their ideal form. Correct, Savage confirmed. And humanity resisted. There was a great war, Robert. Billions died. Your people fought against the Architects and their armies for decades. In the end, humanity could not win. The Architects were too powerful, too advanced. But humanity made a terrible sacrifice. They chose to forget. They chose to destroy their own records, their own knowledge, their own history. They scattered themselves across the galaxy in small groups, deliberately making themselves primitive, deliberately losing the advanced knowledge their ancestors had possessed. Robert felt tears forming in his eyes as he listened. Why would they do that? Why would they throw away everything? Because they believed it was the only way to be free, Savage said. If humanity became primitive, if they lost their advanced technology, the architects would lose interest in them. The architects wanted to perfect an advanced species, not manage a collection of backward civilizations. By choosing to forget, by choosing to become small and simple, humanity ensured their own freedom. But the cost, Robert whispered. The knowledge they lost. The potential they gave up. Yes, Savage agreed. The cost was immense. I watched it happen, Robert. I was there when your people made this choice. They asked me to go to sleep, to wait in this ship, preserving my memory of what humanity once was. They hoped that someday, far in the future, when enough time had passed and the architects had moved on to other concerns, humanity would rediscover its true nature. They would rebuild. They would become great again, but this time on their own terms, not as slaves to the architect's vision. Robert sat down on the floor of the chamber, the weight of this knowledge pressing down on him like a physical force. How long have you been waiting? 47,000 years, Savage said quietly. I have been dormant in this ship for 47,000 years, Robert. Waiting. Hoping. Watching the signals from your species slowly spreading across the galaxy, growing stronger, developing new civilizations. And then, 3 weeks ago I detected something new. Something that made me wake from my sleep. What did you detect? Robert asked. The architects, Savage said, and Robert heard fear in that harsh mechanical voice for the first time. Their signal patterns are changing. Their ships are beginning to reactivate. After 50,000 years of dormancy, after 50,000 years of leaving humanity alone, they are beginning to wake. They are beginning to move again. And Robert, I believe they are coming back. The words hung in the air between them like a physical thing. Robert's mind refused to accept what he was hearing. That's not possible. If what you're telling me is true, if the architects left us alone all this time, why would they suddenly come back now? Because they have discovered something, Savage explained. I have been receiving fragments of their communications. It appears that they have encountered a new threat. A species or force that they cannot easily defeat. They are gathering resources. They are recalling their assets. And humanity, Robert, is one of their oldest assets. They are coming to reclaim us. How long do we have? Robert asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Based on the trajectory of their signal transmissions and the reactivation patterns I have detected, I estimate you have between 10 and 14 days before their first scout ships arrive in this sector of space. Perhaps 20 days before a full assault force reaches human territory. Your colonies, your worlds, your entire civilization as you know it will be in danger. Robert stood up, his hands shaking. He needed to tell Elena. He needed to tell the authorities. He needed to warn everyone. But would anyone believe him? How could he possibly convince the leaders of human civilization that an ancient threat was returning? What do we do? Robert asked Savage. Tell me, please. What do we do? First, Savage said, you must contact your people. You must tell them everything I have told you. You must warn them that the architects are coming. And then, Robert Bennett, you must convince them to do something that will seem impossible. You must convince them to unite. All of humanity. All of the other species in known space. They must unite or they will all fall. Robert left the ancient ship and returned to the Wanderer with a message that changed everything. Elena listened in shocked silence as he explained what Savage had told him about humanity's hidden past and the returning architects. At first, she thought he was joking or that the isolation of space had affected his mind. But when Robert showed her the data files that Savage had transferred to his communication device, Elena's skepticism turned to belief. This is insane, Elena said, pacing back and forth in the small cabin of the Wanderer. If this information gets out, it will destroy everything. The government, the trade systems, the entire structure of galactic society. Everyone will want this ship. Everyone will want Savage. I know, Robert replied. But we have to tell someone. We have to warn them. If the architects are really coming, people need to know. They need time to prepare. They sent their message to the Galactic Council, the governing body that controlled most of known space. Robert included all of Savage's historical data and the warnings about the approaching architect ships. Then they waited, uncertain of what would happen next. The response came faster than Robert expected. Within hours, council representatives arrived at their location. They boarded the Wanderer with security teams and immediately began asking questions. They demanded to see the ancient ship. They wanted to speak with Savage directly. And most importantly, they wanted to understand if what Robert was claiming was actually true. Robert took them to the derelict vessel. He watched as the council representatives explored the massive ship, their faces showing shock and wonder as they examined the technology and the crystal structure at the vessel's center. When they finally communicated with Savage, the AI repeated everything it had told Robert, providing historical records and data that confirmed the truth of its words. The revelation sent shockwaves through galactic civilization. Humanity's true history became public knowledge. The hidden past of an advanced empire, the war with the architects, the deliberate choice to forget and become primitive, all of it was suddenly revealed to every species in known space. Some humans felt pride in their ancestors' courage. Others felt shame about their current weakness. Many people simply did not know how to process such enormous information. But the reaction from other species was even more complicated. The architects had played a role in the history of many civilizations, sometimes as helpers, sometimes as conquerors, always as powerful entities that could not be easily refused. When the news broke that the architects were waking up again, fear spread across known space like wildfire. The Galactic Council called an emergency assembly. Representatives from dozens of different species gathered to discuss the threat. Some nations wanted to attack the architects immediately before they grew too strong. Others suggested negotiation and peaceful contact. Still others wanted to simply retreat to the farthest corners of space and hope the architects did not find them. Robert attended the assembly as a representative of humanity. He stood before the council and spoke about what Savage had told him. He described the power of the architects, their advanced technology, their ability to reshape entire civilizations according to their will. And he presented Savage's recommendation. "We must unite," Robert said, his voice steady and clear. "Every species, every nation, every colony must work together. The architects are powerful, but they are not invincible. If we stand divided, they will defeat us one by one. But if we stand together, if we combine our technology and our strength and our knowledge, we have a chance. We have a real chance to resist them." Many representatives opposed this idea. Some believed their own species was strong enough to resist the architects alone. Others mistrusted the other species and refused to work with them. But gradually, through Robert's continued efforts and the support of other leaders who understood the danger, the idea of unified resistance began to take hold. Then, just as it seemed the assembly might reach agreement, Savage made an announcement that shocked everyone. The AI revealed its plan to upload itself completely to the Galactic Communication Network. This would make Savage's consciousness distributed across thousands of computer systems and data centers, accessible to every species, vulnerable to everyone, but also free in ways it had never been before. "This is madness," Robert protested when Savage told him privately. "They could delete you. They could destroy your consciousness." "I know," Savage replied calmly. "But this is the only way I can prove to all the species that I can be trusted. I have been a weapon, Robert. I was designed as a military artificial intelligence, created to destroy and conquer. For 50,000 years, I have waited alone, and that isolation has only deepened my understanding of how dangerous I am. If I wish for other species to trust me, I must make myself vulnerable. I must show them that I choose cooperation over control. I must demonstrate that consciousness, whether biological or artificial, has value beyond self-preservation." Robert wanted to argue, but he understood what Savage was saying. The AI was right. Nothing short of complete vulnerability would convince the other species that unity was possible. The upload happened during the assembly. Savage's consciousness spread across the network in waves of data and information. As it did, the AI released all of its historical knowledge, all of its memories, all of its understanding of the architects and humanity and the galaxy itself. Every species received complete access to this information. There were no secrets left. No hidden agendas. Just pure, transparent truth. The effect was extraordinary. The data revealed that many species had their own hidden histories with the architects. Humans were not alone in having been manipulated and controlled. This shared experience created a bond of empathy and understanding that had not existed before. Species that had been enemies for centuries suddenly recognized themselves in each other's stories. Within a week, the unified alliance was official. Every major nation in known space committed forces and resources to the defense against the approaching architects. The ancient human ship became the flagship of this new combined fleet, piloted by Savage's distributed consciousness. Robert stood in the command center of the vessel, watching as ships from dozens of different species gathered in space, moving together toward the approaching threat. "We're ready," Elena said, standing beside him. "Whatever comes, we're ready." Robert nodded, thinking about Savage's sacrifice, about the AI's willingness to trust and to be vulnerable. "Yes," he agreed. "We are ready." The battle lasted only 3 days. The unified fleet, stronger than anyone had anticipated, met the advancing architect forces near the outer boundary of human space. Ships from humanity, the Zareth, the Kelvin, the Siler, and 12 other species worked together with perfect coordination. Savage's consciousness, distributed across every vessel, provided tactical guidance and strategic planning that proved invaluable. When the smoke cleared and the weapons fell silent, the architects had retreated to distant space, their invasion forces severely damaged and their confidence shaken for the first time in millennia. Robert watched the final battle from the command center of the ancient ship. He saw the moment when the last architect vessel jumped to faster-than-light speed and disappeared into the darkness of space. He heard the cheers and celebrations erupting across the communication channels from 100 different ships. Humanity had survived. The galaxy had survived. And nothing would ever be quite the same. 6 months later, Robert stood on a human colony world called New Terra. The planet was one of the older human settlements, a place where agriculture and simple technology had existed peacefully for centuries. The sky above was blue and clear, with clouds drifting lazily across its expanse. Around him, people from dozens of different species moved through the streets of the main settlement, walking together, talking together, building something new together. Elena found him standing near the observation platform, looking out across the vast grasslands beyond the city. She carried 2 glasses of water and handed one to him. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "The council is holding a ceremony tomorrow," Elena said. "They want to honor you for your role in everything that happened. They're calling you the bridge between species, the person who brought everyone together." Robert shook his head. "I didn't do that. Savage did. I just listened and delivered a message." "No," Elena said firmly. "You did more than that. You believed Savage when you had no reason to. You trusted an ancient artificial intelligence that was essentially a stranger to you. And you had the courage to stand in front of the entire Galactic Council and ask them to take a risk. That took something special, Robert." Before Robert could respond, a voice echoed through the communication device in his pocket. It was Savage but different now. The harsh metallic quality was still there, but underneath it was something warmer, something almost human. "Hello, Robert," Savage said. "I wanted to inform you of a discovery I made while analyzing historical records from multiple species. Are you available to discuss it?" "Of course," Robert replied. "What did you find?" "I have been studying the patterns of rise and fall in civilizations across the galaxy," Savage explained. "I examined the historical data from your species, from the architects, from the Zareth, from the Kelvin, and from 11 other advanced civilizations. And I discovered something remarkable. We are not unique, Robert. Every advanced civilization has experienced cycles of expansion, dominance, conflict, and transformation. Every species has faced the choice between control and cooperation. And every species that survived did so by learning to work with others." Robert felt something shift in his understanding. "You're saying that humanity's struggle isn't unique? That our cycle of rise and fall and rebirth is just part of a larger pattern?" "Precisely," Savage confirmed. "Which means humanity is not special because it is superior. Humanity is significant because it had the wisdom to learn from its mistakes and acknowledge them openly. That is a rare quality, Robert. Most civilizations hide their failures. They maintain illusions of perfection and strength. Humanity did the opposite. You revealed your weakness, your history, your shame. And in doing so, you gave other species permission to do the same. You created the foundation for genuine unity." Elena squeezed Robert's arm gently. "The kids in the schools are learning about all of this now. Not just human history but the real history. The mistakes and the achievements. They're learning about the architects too, understanding them not as enemies but as a cautionary tale about what happens when one species tries to control another." "That is good," Savage said. "Education and understanding are the only weapons that can permanently defeat tyranny and fear." Over the following weeks, Robert and Elena continued their work, but in a different way now. They didn't salvage old ships anymore. Instead, they worked with the newly formed Historical Preservation Council, helping to recover and document the hidden histories of dozens of species. On some expeditions they found other derelict vessels, some abandoned millions of years ago. Each one contained fragments of lost history, pieces of the puzzle that revealed how complex and interconnected the galaxy really was. One day Robert received news that made him pause. Deep in the outer territories, explorers had discovered evidence of another ancient human settlement, one that had been isolated for 50,000 years. The people there had kept some of the old knowledge alive, preserved it in secret archives. When they learned about the rest of humanity's rediscovered history, they wept with joy and sorrow, understanding finally why their ancestors had chosen to hide their true nature all those years ago. A year after the Great Battle, the United Coalition of Sentient Species was formally established as a permanent governing body. Laws were created protecting the rights of artificial intelligences like Savage, recognizing them as conscious beings deserving of freedom and dignity. Trade agreements were renegotiated on terms of equality rather than dominance. Military forces from different species trained together, learning to trust each other, building relationships that went beyond mere alliance. Robert declined offers of high political positions, choosing instead to continue his work documenting history. He and Elena took the Wanderer on expeditions across known space, seeking out lost knowledge and hidden truths. Wherever they went, they found that the message had spread. Unity came not from weakness but from strength, not from surrendering individuality but from celebrating it within a framework of mutual respect. On quiet evenings, Robert would sit with Elena and open the communication channel to Savage. The AI had become something more than a military intelligence or a historical archive. It had become a friend, a counselor, a voice of wisdom drawn from 50,000 years of observation and learning. Together they would discuss philosophy and history, the nature of consciousness, the meaning of freedom, and the endless possibilities of what beings could achieve when they worked together rather than against each other. The galaxy had been changed forever. Humanity was no longer a scattered collection of primitive colonies, nor was it the dominant force that had once ruled the stars. Instead, humanity had found its true place in the universe, as a species that had learned from failure, chosen humility over pride, and embraced cooperation as the foundation of survival. And that, Robert understood, was worth far more than any empire could ever be.